The conference room had a long mahogany table that had been polished so recently I could see my own face in it. We were on the 14th floor of a glass office building downtown, in the law firm of Vandermeer Coyle, which my husband had retained because his cousin's golf partner was a senior partner. My husband was sitting across from me in his charcoal suit. His attorney, a man named Sanford Vandermeer, was next to him. My attorney, a woman named Tabitha Holcomb-Reyes, was next to me. The mediator was at the head of the table. We were in the third hour of the third mediation session. We had been negotiating the division of assets in our 17-year marriage, and we had reached the part where my husband was being asked to consider whether the contributions I had made as a stay-at-home mother for 14 of those years had economic value. Sanford had been making the argument that they did not. He had been making it for 22 minutes. My husband had been nodding the entire time. Then, when Sanford had paused to take a sip of water, my husband had leaned forward, and he had looked at me across the polished mahogany, and he had said, in a voice loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Pippa, let's be honest. You have not contributed anything to this household in 14 years. You are a useless housewife. You should be grateful I am offering you anything at all." The room went very still. Sanford Vandermeer set down his glass of water. My attorney did not look up from her legal pad. The mediator, a retired judge named Honorable Yolanda Westbrook, made a small note. There was one other woman in that room I had not been paying attention to. Her name was Margolis Pruitt. She was Sanford Vandermeer's junior associate. She was 31 years old. She had been taking notes for 3 hours without ever once making a sound. Margolis Pruitt had been a stay-at-home mother for 4 years before going to law school at night. Margolis Pruitt's mother had been a stay-at-home mother for 26 years before her husband had left her in 1998 with no work history and a high school diploma. Margolis Pruitt looked up from her notes when my husband said the words, "useless housewife." She did not say anything in the moment. She did not need to. By the end of the day, she had decided to do something that would, 6 weeks later, change the shape of the entire case. She did not tell me what she had decided that afternoon. I did not know it was happening for nearly 2 months. I am telling you what she did in this story because women like Margolis Pruitt exist all over the country in conference rooms with men like Sanford Vandermeer, and they are watching, and they are deciding things, and they are choosing sometimes to act. I want you to know they are there. They are why I am here today. Welcome back to Broken Relations Stories. If you are new here, this channel is for the women who have been called names in conference rooms by men who do not realize who else is in the room. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, tell me where you are watching from, and let me take you back to the year I got married, which was 2008 when I was 26 years old, and I had a master's degree from a respectable graduate school, and I had been working as a research associate at a regional think tank, and I had no idea on the morning I walked down the aisle that I would not earn another paycheck for 14 years. My name is Pippa Holloway. I am 43 years old. I have been married for 17 years to a man named Garrison Holloway. He is 49. He is a senior vice president at a large insurance company in our city. We have 3 children. Our daughter Morale is 14. Our son Augustus is 11. Our youngest, Beatrix, is 8. I had been, until I filed for divorce 14 months ago, a stay-at-home mother for 14 years. Before that, I had been, as I mentioned, a research associate at a think tank. I had been good at my work. I had been on track for a promotion. I had been planning to apply to PhD programs the year I got engaged. I had not applied. because Garrison, on the night he proposed at a restaurant on the waterfront, had said to me after I had said, "Yes, Pippa, I want you to know something. I am going to make a lot of money in my career. I do not want you to have to work. I want you to have the kind of life my mother had. I want you to be able to raise our children the right way." I had heard that sentence on the night he proposed, the way a woman in love hears almost everything on the night a man proposes. As a kind of gift, I had thought he was offering me something. I had thought he was saying, "I want to provide for you so that you can have choices." He had not been saying that. He had been saying, "I want to provide for you so that I can decide what your choices look like." The distinction had not been clear to me at 26. It became clear to me slowly over the next 17 years, in increments so small I could not have at the time pointed to any single one of them and said, This is the moment I gave myself away. I gave myself away in 1,000 small moments. I gave myself away every time he said, "Pippa, you do not need to worry about that." I gave myself away every time he said, "Pippa, that is a man's business." I gave myself away every time I let him do the taxes without showing me the returns. Every time I let him handle the investment accounts without explaining the statements. Every time I let him introduce me at his work functions as my wife who stays home with the kids, without adding, even once, and who used to run her own research agenda. I gave myself away over 17 years, one small concession at a time, until the woman who walked into that conference room across from him in March was, by his measurement, the useless housewife he had described. I want to be specific about how the giving away works because I think it is important. It does not happen all at once. It happens in a sequence of small, defensible, individually reasonable decisions. The first one was the PhD. Garrison had said he made enough that I did not need to work. I had been pregnant with Murray. I had told myself I would defer for a year. The year had become 2 years. The 2 years had become 5. By the time 5 years had passed, my old advisor had retired, my writing sample was out of date, my research field had moved on without me, and my application would have required a year of substantial rework before I could even submit it. I had no longer wanted to do that work. I had Augustus by then. I had been tired. The second giving away was the bank accounts. Garrison had said it was easier if everything went through one joint account that he managed. I had agreed because it had seemed easier. I had not, after that point, ever opened my own checking account again. The third giving away was the credit. Garrison had said that putting both of us on the same credit cards was simpler. We had done it. He had been the primary holder. I had been the authorized user. By the time I was 35, I had no individual credit history of any consequence. The fourth giving away was the social. Garrison's work friends had become our social circle. The women I had known from graduate school had moved away, or had become busy with their own children, or had drifted away because I had stopped maintaining the friendships. By 38, my social life was, almost entirely, the wives of Garrison's colleagues. None of those women were the wrong women. They were, in fact, mostly kind. They were just not women I would have chosen on my own if I had been choosing. I had not been choosing for a long time. The fifth giving away was the language. By 40, I had begun, without noticing, to use phrases like "we are going to" when I meant Garrison has decided, and "we need to" when I meant Garrison wants us to. The "we" had become a small kingdom in which Garrison was the king. I had not noticed until Pemberley, during one of our Thanksgivings, had stopped me mid-sentence in 2022 and said, "Pippa, you just said we 6 times in 1 minute. Who is the we?" Tell me who is doing the deciding. I had not answered. I had laughed. I had changed the subject. Pemberley had let me. Pemberley had filed it away. Pemberley had been waiting for me the way older sisters who have been divorced for 9 years wait. I want to tell you about the day I knew I was going to leave. It was a Thursday afternoon in November, 18 months before the conference room. Morale had come home from middle school with a flyer about a young women's leadership program at her school. The program met twice a week. It cost $400 for the semester. Morale had been excited. She had come into the kitchen with the flyer and she had said, "Mom, can I do this? Please? My friend Coriander is doing it." I had said, "Sweetheart, yes, of course. Let me run it by your dad tonight. It is a small expense, but he likes to know about these things." Morale had nodded. Morale was 13. Morale had been raised in a household in which I asked her father about $400 expenditures. I had not, at 13, asked Morale what she thought of that arrangement. I had not asked her at 14. Either I have asked her now. She has told me. She has told me that she had decided by the age of 11 that she did not want to grow up to be a woman who asked another person if she could spend $400. I had not known that my daughter had been watching me in that way. I had not understood that my marriage, which I had been performing for 17 years as a kind of charitable arrangement, had been being watched by a small girl who had been deciding quietly what she did not want her own life to look like. That is the part of this story that costs me the most. I will get to that part. I want to get to it carefully. I had asked Garrison about the leadership program at dinner that night. He had looked at me from across the table. He had said, "Pippa, $400 for what? A program where they sit around and talk about their feelings?" Murray does not need that. She needs to focus on her math. I had said, "Garrison, the program is about public speaking and leadership. It is well regarded. Coriander Halsey is doing it. Cordelia Halsey's mother is the one who runs the program." Garrison had said, "Pippa, I do not care who is running it. We are not doing it. Tell her no." Morale had been at the table. Morale had heard the entire conversation. Morale had looked at me. I had looked at my plate. I had said, "Okay, Garrison." Morale had not said anything. Morale had picked up her plate. She had taken it to the kitchen. She had washed it. She had come back. She had said, "May I be excused?" I had said, "Yes, sweetheart." Morale had gone upstairs. I had sat at the table. Garrison had gone back to reading the paper. I had sat at the table for 14 minutes without moving. I had thought, for the first time in 17 years of marriage, 3 sentences I had not let myself think before. He does not see her. He does not see me. I am not going to let him not see her for 14 more years. I called my sister Pemberley the next morning. Pemberley was 47, 4 years older than me. She lived in Boston. She had been divorced for 9 years. She was a partner at a small consulting firm. She had been telling me, lightly, for several years that she had been worried about me. She had been doing it the way older sisters do, in passing comments at Thanksgivings, in observations about my hair, in questions about my work that I had been deflecting with answers about the kids. I called her at 8:30 a.m. I said, "Pem, I am going to leave Garrison. I do not know when. I do not know how, but I have decided." Pemberley was quiet for 1 second. Then she said, "Pippa, thank God. I will be on a flight tomorrow. We are going to figure this out. Pemberley came down that weekend. We spent 2 days at my kitchen table while Garrison was at the office on Saturday and at his golf club on Sunday. Pemberley walked me through what was, she explained, the most important thing I needed to understand. I had no idea what assets we had. I had no idea what Garrison earned. I had no idea what was in the investment accounts. I had no idea what the mortgage was, what our retirement balances were, what our insurance policies covered, or what would happen to me financially if Garrison was hit by a bus on the way home from his golf club on Sunday. Pemberley said, "Pippa, this is not your fault. This is what 14 years of being told you do not need to worry about that looks like. We are going to fix it." Slowly, without him noticing. "Are you with me?" I said, "Pem, I am with you." She said, "Good. Step 1 is the paperwork. Step 2 is the attorney. Step 3 is the leaving. We do not do step 3 until steps 1 and 2 are completely solid. Is that clear?" I said, "Clear." The next 6 months were a master class in quiet investigation. I want to tell you what they looked like. Because if you are a woman listening to this who has been a stay-at-home wife for any length of time and who has never seen your own tax returns, you need to know what to do. Pemberley taught me. Pemberley had been doing forensic work for clients for 15 years. She knew exactly how to teach a woman who had been kept out of her own finances how to find her way back in. I want to give you the short version. Step 1. I went into the home office one Saturday while Garrison was at golf, and I photographed every page of every document in the filing cabinet. Mortgage statements, tax returns going back 7 years, investment statements, insurance policies, estate documents, bank statements, credit card statements. I photographed everything. I put the photographs on a USB drive Pemberley had brought me. I put the USB drive in a small zipper pouch inside my hiking boots in the back of my closet. Garrison had not opened my hiking boots in 11 years. The boots were safe. Step 2. I opened a P.O. box at a postal annex 14 miles away in a town Garrison had never been to. I redirected very slowly over 3 months the statements for one of our credit cards to that P.O. box by changing the address online during the hours Garrison was at work and the children were at school. I checked the box once a week. Step 3. I opened a checking account in my own name at a credit union 22 miles in the other direction. I transferred $50 every other week into that account from a small inheritance account my grandmother had left me, which Garrison had never paid any attention to because the balance was small. The $50 transfers, Pemberley said, were not going to make me rich. The $50 transfers were going to build a credit history in my own name that I had not had in 14 years. Step 4. I called an attorney. The name Pemberley had given me was Tabitha Holcomb-Reyes. Tabitha was in her mid-40s, half black, half Mexican, a former public defender who had moved into family law a decade earlier and who specialized, by Pemberley's description, in the wives who have been kept small. I called Tabitha in February. I made an appointment in March. I went to her office on a Wednesday afternoon while Beatrix was at school. I brought the USB drive. I brought my notes. I sat in her office for 3 hours. If you have ever sat in an attorney's office with a USB drive of your own financial life and realized for the first time that you have no idea who you have been married to for 17 years, then you know what that conversation felt like. If this is hitting close, drop a comment, subscribe if you have not. We are getting to the conference room. Tabitha walked me through what we were looking at. The picture was, as Pemberley had warned me it would be, not what I had thought it was. Garrison earned, in his most recent calendar year, $487,000 in salary and bonus. I had been told he made around $350,000. We had $1.6 million in retirement accounts, of which Tabitha would have to argue I was entitled to half. We had $740,000 in investment accounts outside of retirement, of which I would also be entitled to half. We owned the house outright. Tabitha estimated its value at $1.1 million. Garrison had been paying a $4,200 monthly contribution to a brokerage account in his sole name, established in 2017, which currently held $681,000. He had also been paying, over the past 11 months, monthly transfers of $1,800 to an account at a small bank I did not recognize, which Tabitha said she would need to investigate further. Tabitha said, "Pippa, here is what I want to do. I want you to keep doing what you have been doing for the next 3 to 6 months. Do not change anything visible in your life. Do not start a side business. Do not buy new clothes. Do not behave differently toward Garrison. The mediation strategy I am going to use depends on him underestimating you. We want him to walk into the mediation thinking he is going to walk over a useless housewife. We want him to believe that. We want his attorney to believe that. We are going to use that belief against both of them. Do you understand?" I said yes. She said, "Good. We file in September." We filed in September. Garrison was served at his office. He came home that evening with the petition in his hand. He sat at the kitchen table. He said, "Pippa, what is this?" I said, "Garrison, it is a divorce petition. I have retained counsel. We will be communicating through our attorneys from this point forward. I have set up the guest room for you. I would prefer if you slept there tonight." He said, "Pippa, you have got to be kidding me. You cannot afford an attorney." I said, "Garrison, I can. We will speak through our attorneys." He stood up. He looked at me. He said, "Pippa, listen to me carefully. You are going to regret this. You are going to be living in a one-bedroom apartment with the kids on alternating weekends and a part-time job at a bookstore. You are going to wish you had stayed grateful." I did not respond. I went upstairs. I read Beatrix a story. I went to bed. I lay awake until 4. I had been lying awake until 4 for a long time. I had become, by then, good at it. The mediation began 6 weeks later. Garrison had retained Sanford Vandermeer through his cousin's golf partner. Sanford was 64. He had been doing family law for 38 years. He had built a particular kind of reputation in our city as an attorney who was, in his own words, tough on alimony. What he was, in fact, was an attorney who specialized in representing high-earning men in divorces against underemployed women, and who used a particular set of techniques to push the women toward settlements that were, by any honest measure, well below what they were entitled to. He used intimidation. He used delay. He used the assumption that the wife did not, in fact, know what she was entitled to. He had been doing this for 38 years. He was good at it. He had not, in our case, done his homework. He had not, in particular, done his homework about who Tabitha Holcomb-Reyes was. He thought she was a former public defender. She was a former public defender. He did not know that the former public defender had been mentored during her early years in family law by a woman who had become by the time I met her, the chief federal judge for our district. He did not know that Tabitha had a network of attorneys, accountants, and judges that ranged across 2 states and 3 federal districts. He did not know that Tabitha had been hired by quietly powerful women in our city for 14 years, and that those women had been recommending her to other quietly powerful women, and that I was, in his calculation, the wrong wife to call a useless housewife in front of the wrong attorney. He had walked into the first mediation session, I am told by Margolis Pruitt, with a set of 3 numbered tabs marked opening, anchoring, and intimidation. His plan had been to overwhelm us with a series of lowball offers, anchor the negotiation in his favor, and rely on my emotional fatigue and Tabitha's caseload to drive me towards settlement within 2 sessions. He had not budgeted for what actually happened. The first session was where Sanford laid out his opening. He proposed that I receive 30% of the marital estate, no alimony, and shared custody of the children with Garrison having the home. He spoke for 47 minutes. Tabitha listened. She did not interrupt. When Sanford was done, she said, "Mr. Vandermeer, thank you for your presentation. We have some questions. We will be following up with written discovery requests this week. We look forward to the next session." She did not make a counteroffer. She did not respond to the proposal. She did not in any way signal that she was bothered by anything Sanford had said. Sanford had not known what to make of it. He had been expecting either an emotional reaction or an immediate counter. He had gotten neither. He had been confused. He had ended the session 30 minutes early. The second session, 3 weeks later, was where Tabitha began to ask her questions. She started with the brokerage account established in 2017. She asked Sanford to walk her through the source of the funds, the contribution history, the tax treatment, and the asset allocation. Sanford, who had not had time to review the brokerage account in detail because Garrison had failed to provide him with the relevant documents, fumbled. He asked for a recess. Tabitha agreed to the recess. During the recess, she did not check her phone. She did not eat lunch. She sat in our conference room across from me, and we did not speak for 47 minutes. We did not need to. The recess ended. Sanford came back with partial answers. Tabitha asked her next question. She asked about the monthly $1,800 transfers to the account at the small bank. Sanford did not have an answer. He said he would need to follow up. Tabitha nodded. She said, "Of course, Mr. Vandermeer. We will look forward to receiving the documentation by Friday." Sanford had ended the second session early as well. The third session was where Garrison called me a useless housewife. Sanford had come into the session with what he had thought was a stronger position. He had reviewed the brokerage account. He had not, however, found a satisfactory explanation for the $1,800 monthly transfers. Tabitha had, 2 days earlier, retained a forensic accountant who had begun to investigate. Sanford did not know about the forensic accountant. Sanford had decided that the right move in the third session was to pivot from financial details back to what he believed to be his strongest position. The position was that I had not contributed anything to the household in 14 years and was therefore not entitled to alimony or to an equitable share of the assets accumulated during those years. He had begun to make that argument 22 minutes in. He had been making it confidently. Garrison had been nodding. Garrison had been so encouraged by the argument that he had decided, in a moment of perhaps unwise candor, to chime in. He had leaned forward. He had said the sentence I told you about at the beginning of this story. Pippa, let's be honest. You have not contributed anything to this household in 14 years. You are a useless housewife. You should be grateful I am offering you anything at all. The room had gone still. Margolis Pruitt had looked up from her notes. Tabitha had not looked up from her legal pad. Judge Westbrook had made a small note. I had not responded. I had been told by Tabitha weeks earlier never to respond to anything in mediation. I had been holding my hands in my lap. I had been counting backward from 100 in increments of 7, which Pemberley had taught me to do when I needed to keep my face still. I had been at 65. I had moved to 58. I had kept counting. The session had continued for another 14 minutes. Sanford had ended early again. What happened in the next 6 weeks, I learned about gradually. I am going to tell you what I learned. Margolis Pruitt, the junior associate at Vandermeer Coyle, had been at Sanford's firm for 2 years. She had been there because the firm paid well and because she had 2 student loans she was paying down. She had not, in those 2 years, said much. She had taken notes. She had drafted documents. She had watched. She had not particularly liked Sanford. She had not particularly liked the way he spoke about the wives he was representing his male clients against. She had been keeping a small private file in her email, marked only with the word things, in which she had been saving little moments. The afternoon Garrison called me a useless housewife had been the moment Margolis decided that the file was not going to be private forever. She had thought about it for 2 days. She had then called a friend of hers from law school, a woman who was now in private practice in another city, and she had asked her friend a hypothetical question. The hypothetical question had been about the ethical obligations of an associate who had information that, if shared with opposing counsel, might be of substantial value in a pending matter, but which had not yet been disclosed by her firm in the ordinary course of discovery. Her friend had given her a careful, lawyerly answer. The answer had been that there were some kinds of information that could not be shared and some kinds that could, and that the line between them depended on whether the information was privileged work product or whether it was, in some sense, simply factual context that would inevitably emerge in discovery if opposing counsel knew where to look. Margolis had thought about this. She had then sent Tabitha an email. The email had said, "Miss Holcomb-Reyes, I am writing in my personal capacity. I would like to suggest that you may wish to request in your next discovery filing complete records of all email communication between my client and any third parties at the email address gjh1975@protonmail.com, going back to January of 2022. I have no further information to provide. Please do not respond to this email." That was it. That was what Margolis sent. She sent it from a personal email, not a work email. She did it on her own time. She did it because Garrison had called me a name in a conference room she had been quietly sitting in, and she had decided that her career, in the moment she had decided it, was not going to be the kind of career in which she sat quietly in those rooms forever. Tabitha received the email. She did not respond. She did, 2 days later, file a supplemental discovery request demanding records of communication associated with that email address. Sanford, when he received the discovery request, called Garrison into his office. Garrison, in that conversation, finally admitted what the $1,800 monthly transfers had been. They had been payments to a woman in another city named Camellia Westcott, who Garrison had been having a relationship with for approximately 5 years, and who Garrison had been supporting financially during that time. Camellia was not just an affair. Camellia was a second household. Garrison had a second life. He had a son with her named August, who was 3 years old. The $1,800 had been child support. The $4,200 monthly contribution to the brokerage account had been, in part, a separate fund Garrison had been building so that he could, at some point in the future, leave me for her without having to substantially compromise his lifestyle. He had been building that fund since 2017. He had been planning to leave. He had been planning, however, to leave on his terms, with his assets protected and with my settlement negotiated down by Sanford to a minimum. He had not been planning for me to file first. He had not been planning for Tabitha to find Camellia. He had not been planning for Margolis Pruitt. The settlement, when it was finalized 11 months later, was very different from the one Sanford had opened with. I received 60% of the marital estate, including the house, on the basis that the marital estate had been substantially depleted by Garrison's expenditures on his second household. I received alimony of $4,800 a month for 11 years, on the basis that I had been kept out of the workforce for 14 years and would require time to reestablish my career. I received primary physical custody of all 3 children. Garrison received alternating weekends. The brokerage account established in 2017 was, after extensive review, ruled to be marital property because it had been funded with marital income and was split 60-40 in my favor. Camellia, who had to be deposed during the proceedings, had not known about me. She had thought she was the wife. She had thought August was Garrison's only child. She had thought the apartment in her city was Garrison's primary residence and that the visits to our city were business trips. She had been wrong. She had been wrong for 5 years. She had left Garrison the week after her deposition. She moved with August to her mother's house in Ohio. I have never met her. I do not need to. I hope, in a way I have not entirely sorted out, that she and August are all right. I want to tell you what those 11 months of negotiation looked like, because I think the popular imagination of a divorce is that it is a single dramatic moment. It is not. It is months of letters. It is responses to interrogatories. It is deposition transcripts. It is forensic accounting reports. It is sitting in Tabitha's office on a Thursday afternoon while she walks you through the same spreadsheet for the 3rd time, because the numbers keep shifting as new information comes in. It is small wins and small losses, and the patience of accepting that the small losses are sometimes part of the strategy. Tabitha had told me in our first meeting that the strategy was to be the calmest person in the room. The strategy was to let Sanford make mistakes. The strategy was to let Garrison reveal himself. The strategy was to never, in any deposition or negotiation, allow ourselves to react. We had executed the strategy for 11 months. Garrison had revealed himself. Sanford had made his mistakes. The settlement, when it had come, had been not a triumph so much as the natural consequence of 2 parties having played their cards in the way each was always going to play them. I had been patient. Garrison had been arrogant. Tabitha had been prepared. Sanford had been complacent. Margolis had been watching. The card game had ended the way card games end when one side has been counting the deck for 14 months and the other side has been bluffing on the assumption that nobody is paying attention. I had been paying attention. I had been paying attention since the Thursday in November when Morel had brought home the flyer about the leadership program. I have been paying attention every day since. Margolis Pruitt left Vandermeer Coyle 4 months after the settlement was finalized. Tabitha had, by then, learned what Margolis had done. Tabitha had not contacted Margolis during the case. Tabitha had decided to wait. After the case was over, Tabitha sent Margolis a handwritten note asking if she would consider lunch. Margolis came to lunch. They had it at a small restaurant in our city neither of them had been to before. Tabitha offered Margolis a job. Margolis accepted. Margolis Pruitt, 3 years later, is now an associate at Holcomb-Reyes Family Law. She has, in the time since she came over, become Tabitha's most trusted associate. She and I have lunch every 6 months. We do not, when we have lunch, talk about my case. We talk about her cases. We talk about the women she is helping. We talk about the conference rooms she is sitting in now and the women on the other side of the table and the words being said by men who do not yet realize who else is in the room. She is, in those rooms now, on the right side of the table. She is one of the reasons. A year and 4 months after the settlement, this is what has changed. I am no longer a stay-at-home mother. I went back to graduate school in September. I am working on the PhD I had been planning to apply for in 2008. The application had been waiting for me for 17 years. The professor I had wanted to work with had retired 3 years before I applied, but his successor, a woman in her early 50s named Dr. Marvell Ainsworth, read my old writing sample and admitted me with a partial fellowship. I am 43 years old. I am the second oldest student in my cohort. I am, by the second semester, near the top of my class. The work has come back to me in a way I had not been expecting. The 17 years I had been away had not been an absence. They had been a long, slow accumulation of pattern recognition and patience and an instinct for what was actually going on in a room, which is a particular skill that academics value if you can name it correctly, and which I have learned to name correctly. I have, in the last 6 months, begun to remember things I had forgotten I knew. I had spoken French in college. I had read it daily for 4 years. I had stopped reading French sometime in 2013 when Augustus was an infant and I had been too tired to read anything that was not in English. I started again in February. I had bought a slim paperback of poems by Anne-Marie Albiach at a used bookstore in town for $4. I had taken it home. I had sat at the kitchen counter in the afternoon while Beatrix was at her after-school art class. I had read 3 poems out loud, slowly, in French, with the rust scraping off my pronunciation in real time. I had been alone in the kitchen. Nobody had heard me. I had not been performing French for anyone. I had been reading it to myself. I had cried at the 3rd poem. The crying had not been because the poem was sad. The crying had been because I had not done that thing for myself in 12 years. The 26-year-old who had spoken French had been waiting. She had been waiting in the kitchen the whole time. I had been the one who had not been letting her speak. I have been letting her speak now. She is rusty. She is going to get less rusty. She is mine. Morel is 16 now. She did the leadership program at her school the year after the divorce. She finished it. The director of the program asked her to mentor the younger girls the following year. Morel said yes. Morel is, by every account, becoming the woman she had decided at 11 she wanted to be. She and I have had careful conversations over the last 2 years about the years I let her father do the deciding. Morel has been kinder to me than I deserved. She has said, "Mom, you did not know what you did not know. You know it now. That is what counts." She has said it more than once. She has meant it more than once. I have, slowly, started to believe her. Augustus is 13. He plays the cello. He is not a complicated child. He misses his father. He has worked through his feelings about the divorce in the company of a good therapist. Beatrix is 10. Beatrix was 4 when her father was a different father than he is now. She has been less marked by the changes than the older two. She is herself. She is the reader of the family. She is on any given Saturday morning in the corner of the living room with a stack of library books and a small pillow and a glass of milk, having a conversation with herself in a language I have not been invited into. I do not need to be invited. I am her mother. I am near her. She is reading. That is the work. The cardinal that visits the feeder I put up in the front yard this spring after Garrison moved out came on a Tuesday in April. I had not asked anyone for a feeder. I had bought it myself at a small hardware store down the street with money I had earned editing a short piece for an academic journal as a side gig during my first semester. The check had been for $84. I had used some of it to buy the feeder. The cardinal had arrived a week later. He brings a female now sometimes. They take what they want. They fly away. They come back. They have, like me, not asked anyone's permission. They are not, like me, going to. Pemberley flies down once a month now. She comes for a long weekend. She stays in the guest room that used to be Garrison's home office. She brings me a bottle of wine and a stack of books. We sit at the kitchen island on Friday nights and we talk for hours. She does not anymore count my wheeze. She is letting them go. They have, over the last year, almost entirely disappeared. I have been speaking, increasingly, in the first person singular. I have been doing it on purpose. The pronoun matters. The pronoun is a small thing that has, in the way small things sometimes do, turned out to be the entire architecture. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been called a name in a room by a man who did not know who else was in the room? Drop a comment. Tell me about the woman who was watching. Tell me about the moment, if it has happened to you, that she decided to be on your side. I read every comment. I mean that. I want to say one more thing. To the women who have been stay-at-home mothers for any number of years, who have not seen your own tax returns, who have not opened your own credit cards, who have not in years written your own check to your own savings account, start now. Quietly, without fanfare. Get a copy of the tax returns. Photograph the documents. Open a P.O. box. Open a checking account in your own name. Build your credit. You are not being paranoid. You are doing what 14 years of being told you do not need to worry about that requires you to do, if you ever decide that you do in fact need to worry about it. The work is small. The work is patient. The work is the thing that gives you back to yourself, in the end, when you need it. I love you. Start now. The 26-year-old you were is waiting. She has been waiting for a long time. She is going to be so glad when you let her speak. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. There are more stories like this on this channel. The link is in the description. I will see you in the next one. Thank you for being here.